Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Just very briefly, we share the concerns about the debt to GDP ratios and the increase in budget deficits. I'd just like to ask SARS, Mr. Kiswitter, the changes in the outlook, minus 52.5 billion collected for this year, minus 84 billion and minus 114.7 billion. Surely, with the introduction of the big business unit, how accurate will those figures be going forward? Because that is clearly a very important aspect, is the collection of SARS. Secondly, Minister, the issue of corruption, which you have referred to very briefly, we welcome the additional amounts to NPA, Hawks, SIU, but do we appreciate the fact that they can, if you double their budgets even, they can collect tens of billions of rands now with the additional powers of the special tribunals. And that is something I would really look, given the fact that we estimate 500 billion was lost through corruption. The issue, I would also ask Minister, the engagement with Moody's. At this stage, we know they are going to bring out the assessment in 2 days. What has been your engagement with Moody's? What is their assessment of the medium-term budget, if you're able to comment on that at this stage? And then the very important issue that you raised in your speech about SOCs, no more bailouts, but instead of loans. Now, we know in June 3, 2015, the minister converted a 60 billion rand loan to equity. So we've been there before. What is the chance of you giving a loan and then it is converted to equity down the road? We appreciate your concerns, but we've followed this path before. But at the end of the day, we've got to ensure that we stabilize the SOCs, so we fully appreciate your efforts in that regard. One last question, and that relates to the comments of the National Union of Mine Workers that say if you unbundle Eskom, we are going to close down the power stations. That might be more pertained to the Minister of Public Enterprises, but maybe you'd like to comment on that as well, because clearly that impacts on our whole economy. Thank you, Chair.
The loan facility, I think Sepiso can speak a little bit about that, DG. But basically, it's a basic thing. If, as Dondo was saying, if your grown-up children keep coming to you to ask for money and you just keep on giving them money, the sense of responsibility diminishes. But if you say, okay, fine, yes, a family trust, you want to borrow money, go to the trust, but you must pay back. You have to pay back. But then there's, again, another conundrum. The conundrum is that these state-owned enterprises are owned by the state. The state is a shareholder. If it was in the private sector and a company got into liquidity problems, they will do a rights issue to be able to recapitalize the business. Now, in the state, there's no right issue. It's just equity injection all the time by the state, and you're the only shareholder. You see, unlike, say, at Telkom, where Telkom is a partnership, a mixed sort of economy type company, because there's private sector there, there's a state there. When there's to be a rights issue, all of us have to inject liquidity. But in this instance, where the state is a sole owner, it means the taxpayer has to do the rights issue by injecting capital. And I think what we're saying is that there will be moments when it's clearly will be in a rights issue environment where we have to provide allocation. There are times when really it's a liquidity mismatch issue. Then these state-owned companies must approach that facility in the Treasury to go and borrow at negotiated interest rates, which will probably be less than market rates. I'm looking at Sepiso with fear. So additional support to fight corruption, I agree with you, and DG Dondo and the head of the prosecuting authority are in constant contact, and we have allocated additional money. We heard you very well, Mr. Honorable Swart, in the House, again and again. We've heard you, and we're already doing something about that. So we agree with you. Additional measures of support for SARS, we're working on that as well. We have to support SARS. I mean, there's no option. I mean, that's Caesar. So that we must support them so that people can render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And Caesar has a tendency of breaking bones if you don't pay. Honorable Dlozi. The ratings agencies are our friends and our tormentors. So, I think it started in Porsche. Was it started Porsche I was showing? Fish. Fish is really not impressed with us. They said that you guys didn't go far enough. I will leave that to TG Dondo to speak to them. Moody's, they have said that they will release their view tomorrow. And they were looking very carefully at our fiscal stance. So we'll see what they say. At the most, I hope they keep the rating where it is. But I'll ask the ACDP to help me in prayers. It's not looking good. So, but we'll keep the prayers. The staff in the National Treasury keeps a very close contact with the ratings agencies. They were due to have spoken to them as we go towards yesterday, but I asked them not to do it this time. I asked them not to do it this time, knowing that we are in a very difficult situation. There might be misunderstanding and so on. So, the NUM statement about ESCOM, I think is something that's subject to negotiations and discussion, and clarifying things amongst ourselves, and understanding that we're in a difficult situation and that we should really try and work together as much as we can.
You must take the former NUM General Secretary with you when you go.
There's two of them.
Yeah, there's two of them.
But I think my experience from the time when I was Minister of Labor is that one must not be alarmed by initial statements issued, but be open to conversation and negotiations. The end result is usually different from the starting point. That's what negotiations is about, I suppose. So I think there will be negotiations there. South African Express I've spoken about, SAA I've spoken about. Oh, by the way, I discovered something, Honorable Shivambu. There are certain categories of workers at SAA who receive an allowance for arriving at work. When you sign arrival at work, you get an allowance. State-owned enterprises.